lights and cameras and mirrors.
Oh, hello, it's your boy, Auteur Deluxe. Today we're going to talk about Norman J. Warren. I was saddened to hear of the passing of Norman J. Warren yesterday, March 11th, 2021. He was a director of the video NASTIES, a lot of exploitation, sexploitation, horror, and gore films. He did Satan's Slave, Bloody New Year, Terror, Inseminoid, Prey, Prey. Full disclosure, I had no idea who he was until about October of last year. His box set from Powerhouse Indicator Films went on sale and I ended up getting it. It blew me away. You're lucky when you blind buy a box set. You're lucky if you like one of them. If you get like truly blind bought a box set, you're lucky if you like one of them. I ended up liking about 4 of them, and Inseminoid wasn't really for me. Prey is this lush, weird sci-fi film with these great greens and these really the color on that film pops off the screen, and obviously the story is insane. Satan's Slave, it has all kinds of twists. Really enjoyed Satan's Slave. Again, practical effects, practical gore. Don't want to give anything away. Really cool gore. And the other ones, Bloody New Year, a lot of more lo-fi effects and kind of ghosts moving things around, and it just really works. A lot of in-camera effects. Very DIY, very doing what you could with the materials given, and no budget. Satan's Slave is especially good. This was my favorite one. There's no doubt that this cult classic inspired The House of the Devil by Ty West. That's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. That came out in 2009. It's aping and paying homage to a lot of these 1970s horror, sexploitation films, but Satan's Slave walked the walk. It came out in 1976, and it is one of those films. Warren's movies they're trashy, they're gory, but they're done with a particular care and a particular love of film that just comes off the screen. I think this lacks in a lot of American horror movies of the same time, of the same era, especially slashers. In his films, the nudity seemed less gratuitous, to me at least. That might be a personal opinion, but it seemed less gratuitous and at least less arbitrary. His plots really stick with you. The plot to Satan's Slave takes like 3 turns. His movies, whether the plots are really good or just kind of good, they suck you in and you're with it until the very end. They're scary and they're violent films, but they don't seem mean-spirited. A lot of, even like giallo films, seem a little mean-spirited. Who would have thought these movies where they just murder women might be a little misogynist. And when you see an interview with Warren, he's just this sweet older man. He's not pretentious. He's not an edgelord. He's not trying to scare the shit out of you. He's just trying to make these films that he finds interesting. Here's a funny little clip of this adorable older man telling the story of how he got the sound right to make a sword flying through the air.
Sound effects are an important part of any horror film, and I must say this is one stage that I always thoroughly enjoy, because it means I can go into a studio and do all manner of strange things like banging microphones and making weird noises with your mouth and whatever, and then you do little odd things with them like reverse it or put reverberation or slow it down, speed it up, whatever, and you produce the sort of assortment of strange sounds that you need. But there was one sound that actually was eluding us, and that was a sound that would go well for the flying sword. And one time when we were all sitting around trying to think what else we could try, suddenly we heard this noise, it sounded very promising. What it was, in fact, there was a tape spool which was rewinding, and an engineer, without realising it, had a key resting on the spool, and it was producing this very unusual sort of screechy sound. So of course we immediately recorded it. I think we reversed it, we slowed it to 4 times its natural speed, and there it was. There was the sound, the screech that became the flying sword.
I made this video to honor Norman J. Warren, but also just to kind of spread the word about his films. I think this is a good opportunity to touch on the importance of preservation and restoration, as well as curation. It's important to get out of your own boxes as a film fan. Scorsese recently did an essay about curation and the importance of curation, and I'm not as qualified or as smart as him to talk about it, so you should read that article. But I will say that I've benefited from good curators. I've benefited from the things that Criterion picks to put out, the things that Criterion puts on their channel. They like to raise up certain filmmakers, and especially Powerhouse Indicator. They put out this Norman J. Warren box set. They put that out right next to these weird underseen Paul Schrader films. They put it next to these John Ford films. They put it next to these Hammer horror films. when everything's on the same level, it makes you go, okay, so who's this guy? Who's this guy? He's right next to John Ford in Powerhouse Indicator's eyes. Without that, he would have fallen into the algorithm. He would have fallen into just shit that horror dorks talk about. So I think it is important for curation to kind of raise things up beyond just like what they have the rights to. This is just my long dorky way of saying, listen to curators, like listen to people that know what they're talking about, that are experts on film. John Waters does his year-end lists that are always great. That's how I found Krisha. Edgar Wright is a big proponent of Phantom of the Paradise. That's not how I found it, but it's great to have someone championing that film. You've got Kino Lorber putting out and raising up a lot of very weird films. I got Mom and Dad, which is a literal sexploitation film. It's like a scare film about STDs. I would have never seen that if Kino Lorber didn't put it out. They put out The Good Times Kid. I loved that film. I would have never seen it without Kino Lorber. The same thing with Powerhouse Indicator. Like I said, they raise up these weird ones right next to John Ford, right next to Sam Fuller. Same thing with Criterion, especially their streaming service. You've got the Criterion Collection, that is what it is, but then also these weird things that they acquire to kind of get good distribution. They have a lot of exclusives on their streaming channel. Same thing with Arrow streaming. I would have never seen Demons 1 and 2. I mean, it's Dario Argento adjacent, but I would have never sought these movies out. You know how many movies have fucking demon in the title? A lot of things just kind of fall into the algorithm. They just kind of fade into just shit that horror dorks talk about all the time. And I understand that's probably what I'm doing right now. Twitter is a fucking echo chamber of hot takes, and they're content talking about the same 30 movies forever. I'm a big proponent of making a watch list. Find the things you want to see, and then seek out, then worry about which streaming service they're on. I think a lot of casual film fans have this idea that if it's not on Netflix, it may as well not exist. And that's dangerous. That's a scary thought. I don't like that thought. The algorithm is evil. The fact that they change the artwork on the same 300 movies over and over and over again to try to freshen it up and make you think like, oh wow, these are new movies. I'm getting out of my box. I'm finding new things. It's the same fucking movies. That has led me to an endless scroll, an endless, that feeling when you're looking through a streaming service and you're just like going and going and going, and you start to think, maybe I don't even like movies. That's dangerous. That's literally the opposite of film appreciation. I think that layout can be good for original content. It can be good for trash TV, but for films, I don't like it. Long story short, watch something you wouldn't normally watch. You might enjoy it.